The first question I think we got is, I'm going to bring it up here, is do you have MikroTik support? So I think the broader question here is, is there limitations to support for what you can monitor from a network infrastructure perspective?
So if the device supports SNMP, we're good to go. We go in and with our product, we will dig into the device and say, oh, you're a MikroTik, or oh, you're an Extreme switch, you're a Palo Alto firewall, you are a Cisco Nexus switch. So depending upon what the device is, we will use SNMP to dig at the device, much like a seasoned network expert would dig, to say, what do you support? Okay, you're a Cisco device. You probably support these custom Cisco MIBs. Okay, you probably support CDP. You probably support QoS. So we dig around to find out the inventory information, all that information about the device, and then bring it back. And we can do this digging exercise on pretty much any device made by any company. And even if we find some old 3Com hub that somebody puts on their network that is 20 years old, we can still dig around on that and still find some interesting information.
So I think in a similar vein here, and it wasn't simply monitoring on this question, it's simply SNMP monitoring. So the question is, do you do server monitoring, or is this SNMP specific? Or do you get into doing things like WMI or authenticated access to servers or anything like that?
Yeah. So our information sources that we'll use to collect is SNMP. We'll use syslog information. We'll use CLI information to be able to get into devices and backup configurations and be able to do automation. We have NetFlow and all the various different versions of NetFlow, V5, V9, SFlow, JFlow, all of that, as well as WMI. And also SNMP traps. So pretty much any of the standard culprits that you're going to find on the network, we're going to be using those as data sources. Okay.
Let's see. I'm looking for some other questions here. There was a question specifically about Lab. So do you have a trial or a free version that people can use to get their hands on it, to get some evaluation? Like how do people try things out?
Yeah. So if you go to our website, www.PathSolutions.com, you can contact one of our engineers there and we can get a proof of concept demo going for you. We can also get you, there's a sandbox. If you don't want to even go through that far, you can go to our sandbox and use the demo sandbox to explore the product and see how it works.
Okay. There was a question here. This is a great question, actually, from Matt Jenkins. And it says, they see MPLS on your diagrams. And this is always one of those things that we have to clarify, because MPLS is different for service provider engineers versus people who work in the enterprise. So when you mention MPLS, are you talking MPLS as in the service you consume as an MPLS link? Or are you actually capable of monitoring like the nuts and bolts of MPLS and some of the tagging and things that go on with that?
So I'll say most of our customers use MPLS as enterprise, and actually a lot of them are switching to just VPN tunnels and SD-WAN. So yeah, a bit of balance going on, or I should say rebalancing. Every time there's a new technology, there's a rebalancing. But we also do have the ability to look at it from the supplier side. Okay.
I had a couple of questions. You did mention automated discovery. Is that just CDP, LLDP, or are there other things going on there that are doing that discovery for you?
So this was one of my frustrations with a lot of tools, is that a lot of tools out there will say, okay, you've installed a database, you've installed the software, now you can spend your time configuring it, and you find out, gee, this is going to take weeks, if not months, to get enough data out of your network because of the amount of setup required. So one of the things where we figured is, if you give us subnet ranges to scan to find devices, find switches, routers, gateways, firewalls, anything that responds with SNMP, and you give us the SNMP credentials, we will discover all of your network infrastructure devices. And usually within the first hour of deployment, you're set up, you're completely done, and you're able to start realizing, gee, here's some problems that the product has already found, and you have your network diagram is done. You have visibility into what's working, what's broken, and you start learning more about your network simply because there's more data. Again, Tony, what you were saying about, you love data, and it's like if you have data, but you also have to have data collected and also have it pre-analyzed so that you can come to the conclusion of saying, hey, I didn't realize that we were dropping packets on this interface because of a cabling issue.
Okay. I've got a list I was typing as we were talking. So, did I see that you have Pearl Hop? I'm sorry, Tony.
Excuse me. May I?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Sorry, with the delay, sometimes we end up speaking over each other. I was just joking around. But I had a question about the single executable. First of all, I think your solution is very cool. I think it's a very awesome monitoring solution. I like you guys' approach to it. But one of the things that I think sets you apart from other players is I love this idea of being able to send a user a single executable, gather information from their perspective, and be able to report that data back so that me as an analyst or an engineer or an operator, someone who's handling a help ticket, is able to understand what's going on from the client's machine. So my question is about that. The single executable, can that be run in user space? Does that need administrator privileges? And how often do things get added, or when does that get updated and stuff like that?
Great minds think alike, Tony. That was on my list for sure. I wanted to know what kind of privileges are needed for that executable.
So this is our first go out into the market with that capability, and we're finding incredible interest in it because of all the work at home users. It does require local admin rights to be able to collect the information. If you don't have local admin rights, we also have WebRTC as a method of collecting a more limited amount of information, because it doesn't have the same rights to be able to get that information. But for any browser, any modern browser on any operating system, it's still going to be able to get you a limited subset of information through WebRTC. As far as, where did we come up with the idea of doing this single executable is, we kind of looked at it and said, gee, right now you go to the doctor and the doctor says, I want these 17 different lab tests run on you. You don't go to the lab 17 times, and the doctor certainly doesn't go with you to the lab. You go down to the lab and they do one blood draw, and then they come back and the doctor gets notified when those 17 results come in. That way the doctor can review the information and say, oh, here's the problem. You're eating too many Big Macs and you need to cut back on that. So it's the same sort of thing where you're not wasting the doctor's time, and in this case, the network engineer's time, of trying to schedule the meeting and trying to tell the user, well, do a trace route and send it to me. Oh, trace what? And deal with a non-technical user. You have something that will collect that information automatically for you, and you can sit and look at all the results and say, I found the problem because you've got a wireless signal strength problem. Are you doing this in your far corner of your backyard? Oh, yeah, okay. Maybe you should move inside the house closer to your AP.
And another piece, just to tag on the end of that, is the executable signed? Who's it signed by? Because a lot of enterprise policies won't allow you to run unsigned executables.
Oh yeah, we have these signed. It is signed by us. This is all very core to what we're doing. Is again, it's a and by being a single executable, it means we don't have 400 DLLs that are floating about that we need. We can have one process that goes through to make sure that our code is our code.
Okay. I have a question. I mean, we're talking about executable. That makes me think it's Windows. Is it Windows only? Are you guys building processes for remote users with Mac or remote users that may run Linux? I know not many people actually run Linux on the desktop. We can make the joke here, but I'm just curious. What is the what is the OS support for that remote executable? You said it's new, so it's understandable if it's just Windows for now.
We figured we'd start on Windows and offer the WebRTC capability. So again, WebRTC has some pretty interesting stuff, and by being just you use it through the browser, it means you can sit there with a cell phone. You can sit there with whether it's Android or iPhone or whatever, as long as it is a modern browser on Mac OS or Linux, you're going to be able to get test results and see what is the stability of your connection.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you do have, a subset available across the board, the executables Windows for now. That makes sense. I did have a question also about support for vulnerability detection. So you mentioned the idea that you can go out and scan the network. You have all the OSs kind of documented, and you're going out and referencing it versus NIST. Obviously, for OS detection and fingerprinting, that's not traditionally been 100%. It's close, but not full. So I'm curious if you have a list of supported devices that fingerprint correctly all the time. Is there any way to add devices to that list manually in case it doesn't fingerprint correctly? Like what does that process look like?
Yeah. So we, as part of our build process, we have a continuous improvement on that front. So it's effectively every time we do a new release, there's additional fine tuning of that. And I'll say on the Cisco side, we got that locked in. Palo Alto, we got that locked in. Extreme is pretty good. Juniper is pretty good. There's a lot of other players out there in the market that we might not have as locked in. But in general, I mean, I can show you this as part of the demo as far as how much information we have. And it's part of our digging process that makes us so that we're a bit more accurate than a lot of other players, because we know how to dig inside the device to say, okay, I know you're saying you're a Cisco device, but really, what are you? Okay, you're a Nexus device. Okay, great. What are you? Okay, you're a Nexus 9K. Okay, what OS? We keep fine tuning that with just our digging process to be able to learn more about what that device is, to be able to get you more accurate information.
Okay.
Generally, our whole practice is try and reduce or remove the administration of the tool. That way, as an engineer, you're using it to solve problems, and you're not having to spend a ton of time maintaining the tool.
Okay. I did see something else I wanted to ask about. Did I see that you have like per hop latency validation? Like you were showing like different hops of the network between two devices and kind of laying out not only the path, but then like what latency is between those two specific devices. Is that correct? Or is it from the endpoint to that particular device?
It's the endpoint to each of the devices along the path. So if you have, 7 different router hops to get to a destination, and you're wondering, okay, we're losing packets somewhere between A and B, and you want to find out where are the packets being lost, we can tell you this is where your loss is occurring. This is where your latency is occurring. This is where your out of order is occurring, so that you can determine along that path, your first 3 hops are rock solid. You have no out of order packets, low latency, low jitter, no problems for those first 3 hops. It's really hop 4 is where your packet loss is coming from, and hop 4 and 5 is where you're starting to see a lot more out of order.
I have one more question. Now I'm going to let you, unless Tony has any more to add to it.
No. Let's get to the demo.
I've been peppering you. I definitely want to give you some time to get to the demo. The SecOps you mentioned was something that layered on top of the core product. Is that like a separate license, or is that part of the core component? Because I know you offer a ton in that core component, but you did say that, so I want to make sure that I understand that clearly.
Yeah. So the way we do licensing is it's actually very different than a lot of other products. A lot of other products, they're going to nickel and dime you for, you want IPAM, write us a check. You want NetFlow, write us a check. And we're figuring, no, if you're a network person, the core is going to include everything you need as a network person. If you want the security features, that is an optional module that you can enable. And it's really just a software key that we enable. So it's not even a separate installation. The whole installer, which is about 80 megs, so it's a very compact installer. To let you guys know, we're kind of proud of the fact that we've coded everything in C and C++, so it's very compact, no bloatware here, very efficient. And what that means is we have far better scalability than other products. But what this means is we can turn on that SecOps capability with just a license change. We can turn on remote worker troubleshooting with just a license change. And that means that support is a lot easier. It's a single integrated package. There's not another installer you have to install. And it doesn't get ugly and complex. It's just turn on a license key. You've got the features.
I think you said SQLite is the database behind the application. And so what does the footprint look like? This is from Laz. What does the footprint look like for like a 1,000 node network? Like what type of machine are we talking about? And what does it look like? Because you're collecting a lot of information.
Okay, so for a 1,000 node network, what I'd recommend is a 10 or maybe 12-year-old Centrino laptop with maybe 1 gig of RAM.
Okay. Okay. So you're saying you're efficient. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So a modern server. So, I don't even know how to quantify that today, but the idea is I'm going to go buy something off the rack. I'm going to spend, $5,000, maybe $10,000 on a server. Like, how much horsepower do I need to run a decent sized network? Or is it that just your average everyday run of the mill box can run more nodes than whatever? Like, help me get an idea of what that looks like.
So I'm going to say most every one of our customers, they just pop a virtual machine into place. They'll give us 2 CPUs. They'll give us 4 gigs of RAM, maybe 8 gigs if they want a little bit more room. But we have customers up to 150,000 nodes, and they'll monitor that with a 2 processor, 8 gig of RAM machine with 50 gigs of disk space. And if you're smaller than 150,000 nodes, you really don't need a whole lot. And part of our argument there is we're looking to save you money so that you're not having to say, gee, I need 12 machines deployed around the environment. I need to have a SQL Server database license. I need to have all of this complexity. That just costs your company money. And I figure one virtual machine that's a sliver of a footprint doesn't take a whole lot, and it's going to be far more better performance than what you get out of a lot of other solutions.
So I think you covered this already, Tim, but the installer to install this as a server, right? We have to have it has to be installed on a Windows machine. Does it have to be installed on Windows Server or Windows Desktop or what?
It can go on a desktop. So we actually have a license model of this that works for people who are going into customers where they drop in with their laptop, plug in and say, let me analyze your network. And really within 20, 30 minutes, they're able to say, hey, we found a whole bunch of problems. Here's your network diagram. Here are some security exposures you have. Because of the automated collection, it means you can sit down in a customer's environment. As long as you have SNMP and as long as you have the proper credentials, you're going to be able to do an instant analysis of what's working, what's broken, what does the network diagram look like.
I want to bring this one up because we were talking about size and scale, and I want to bring this up. So, like, what is the retention for 50 gigs? Because you're doing a lot with flows and things that are historical in nature that tends to collect up over time. So you mentioned that 50 gig spec. I would be curious, like what would you expect from a retention perspective on a machine like that?
So I'm going to put an asterisk in here. So the data storage for the network monitoring part is 50 gigs. And that is for the 150,000 nodes, and that is for 13 months of information. So that gives you the ability to compare this month, this year to last month, last year. That does not include NetFlow footprint. NetFlow footprint is something that usually you can determine how much NetFlow you want. You can put 10 gigs allocation towards it and say, okay, based upon the number of flows per second you're getting, that's 2 days worth of information. If you want to store a week worth of net flow, then you just do some calculations and say, okay, we need 40 gigs to store this. So the net flow is really a separate a variable than what the SNMP data storage is.
Right. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I got another question here, specifically around air gap networks. So I know that in Network Collective, we've got a bunch of people who work in, military or defense or government networks that have to be air gapped or energy or whatever, right? So how well does this work if the monitoring system can't check out? Because you mentioned we referenced NIST and we referenced some other things. So obviously there's some online components. What does it look like on an air gap network?
So if you have no internet connectivity whatsoever, and we do have customers that operate that way, and for obvious reasons, I can't share their names. And
yeah, that's usually the case.
So in those circumstances, really, you have the NIST information that what you can do is you can copy that NIST information off of NIST's website and say, let me drop that file into the appropriate directory inside of our server and do that on a monthly basis manually. And that way you'll have all of the latest NIST. So it doesn't have to be a live feed if you don't want to. So there are processes that you can put in place that ends up filling in that information. So it can work perfectly fine having all of the, I shouldn't say all of the umbilicals. We have effectively 5 connections to the outside world. We have a license check-in. We have a blacklist download that really does, it can be there or not there. You can manually copy the blacklist if you prefer. You can copy the NIST information if you prefer. So we have a well-published list of what our connections are to the outside world, and every one of those can be shut down.
So, and all of those procedures are documented, so that someone could go out and look and figure out how to do that on their own. Awesome.
Yep.
Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the question there is probably stemming from the licensing aspect. You know, Cisco Smart Licensing was a headache for those of us in isolated networks. We had to run our own little smart servers, and it was a pain, an absolute pain. So I think that licensing feature, that licensing check, making sure that gets disabled, and that this software still operates as the license that I've purchased, perfectly fine.
You don't need any weird license server or anything. It's a file that we will give to you and say, put this file in this location, and it will do its job and say, you're happy, you're licensed. I think part of the difference is that our team on our side, we've worked as network engineers. We've been frustrated by all of these sort of practices that are put in place by either, dare I say, well-intentioned business people, but they just don't get it, or programmers that, again, don't get it. Because we've worked as networking folks, it's like, no, I just want a file. I don't want to set up a license server. I don't want complexity. I want something that works and is easy. And that's kind of our whole intent. Make your life easier, because network engineers, their lives are hard enough as is.
We had another question from Laz. Laz is apparently very curious about your product, because he's asked quite a few good questions here. This was brought up as you were demoing kind of the path troubleshooting, right? So we picked 2 nodes and kind of take a look at all the interfaces and all the components between 2 systems. And his question, and it's a good one, is how does this work with firewalls in between? Like, what needs to be open? Is it just SNMP, or are there other things that need to be open for some of those troubleshooting things to operate so we can get that data?
I'm going to say SNMP for the path map. All we need is SNMP information, because what we're doing is we're picking up routing tables, we're picking up ARP cache, we're picking up spanning tree, bridge tables. So we're able to determine connectedness. And this was an exercise many years ago for us. Is we sat down and said, if you had a routing table and you had a bridge table and you had ARP cache and you had all this information, could you path through the network? And we did it as a manual exercise and said, yeah, the data is there. Let's do it.
Someone apparently really wants to talk to you, Tim.
Yeah. More likely as a late evening spam call is my guess.
That's funny. So one of the other questions we have here is from Matt Jenkins. And he asked specifically can the system have different devices, interfaces be pulled at different intervals? So I have a critical system or a core that I need to pull on a more frequent basis. I have something sitting at the edge where collecting every 15, 20 minutes is fine or something. Can you set those intervals, or is that something that's set within the system itself?
So you can set the global interval, which is typically most folks just leave it at 5 minutes, figuring that's enough visibility. We don't allow for different intervals to be collected, because we figure that just ends up creating a different drumbeat depending upon where you're looking, and we're still going to get the data in enough granularity to solve the problem. And so we kind of look at that and say it really doesn't make much of an impact if you say have everything at a 2-minute poll, if you have everything at a 5-minute poll. And so if you keep everything on that same drumbeat, that means all the data will correlate. And that's really what our correlation engine needs to be able to say, this happened at the same time as this happened along this path. And it just keeps everything aligned.
That makes sense to me. I had a question about your new device detection. So this one's from me. All those were from some other people. New device detection. I mean, is that being driven by like MAC addresses showing up in a switch table? Like what's the underlying tech to discovering a new device on your network that you haven't seen before?
So ARP caches, we're looking at all the layer 3 devices that we're monitoring and checking their ARP caches to say, is there any new MAC address that has never been seen before? And what is that device? What is the MAC address? What is the manufacturer? All of that information about it, as well as, since we have the ARP cache, we know the IP address, and we correlate that with flow information so that we can say very quickly, hey, this MAC address just popped into your network. It has this IP address. these are the ARP caches where it exists. And by the way, these are the flows that it has going to a server in North Korea.
That's a really interesting use case, like to collect that and start collecting that right away. And I think
up in Amazon's cloud, but same communications.
Absolutely. So I had one more question about your SIM call simulator. You mentioned, I think you kind of just ran through it quick, that you were going to enable DSCP. Is that something that you can set what markings you want? Is it to EF by default? Because I could see a lot of uses for that where I know it's not how it was designed, but for actually testing that you're getting data through on particular queues. Like if it's something easy to set the DSCP to whatever is relevant for my test. And am I dropping packets? What's the performance like on a particular queue? I could definitely see hacking that and using that for a lot of different things. While it's very cool in its purpose itself of showing you the SIP call capacity and performance from end to end, I think that it would be an interesting little tool to maybe expand, because there's other uses for something like that if you can set the DSCP values.
Yep. You can set the values. And generally what we do is, and I apologize, I didn't have enough time on this presentation, but what I'll do is I'll show off how you can set tags on one call and then set no tags, untagged, on another, and say, let's flood the connection with these untagged data packets and see what happens. You should expect to have packet loss on the untagged packets and no packet loss, no latency, no jitter on the tagged packets.
Yeah.
And we're able to show whether you're getting proper respect or not by flooding the network with those untagged packets and see what the result is.
Actually validating that your QoS policies are doing what they're supposed to be doing. That's really cool.
And then you go into the web side of the product and you can see what's wrong with the QoS tags, because we have all of that QoS information presented on the website.
That's very neat. Tony, do you have anything else? Because I've exhausted my list of questions. Not that list has been unsubstantial on its own.
There's no, actually, I just actually want to say that Tim, I saw you guys present at Network Field Day 23, and I really liked you guys' workflow. I liked your overall dashboards and things. And earlier on this show, a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I showed off my security and network monitoring platform that I have at my house that I've pieced together from open source tools and security tools and things like that. And I just wanted to say that I liked one of the aspects of your tool so much that I kind of reproduced it in my own way on this end. So, I just wanted to say that's just sort of, giving you guys a kudos that you've done something that's really well. And I recognize the value in it. And what it was being able to identify a flow that was violating a security policy based on NetFlow, based on IP address, and being able to drill down into the network and see exactly which port that device was connected to, and just be able to correlate the two very quickly without having to leave your tool. Typically in a SOC or a NOC, that information is in many different tools, and correlating between them. So I kind of built my own using some open source stuff and logging. But I just wanted to say, that was really cool. And a lot of the integrations that you guys have is really, really good. So I'm happy to have you guys here and demo. And I hope if anyone out there has any questions and wants to see more from PathSolutions, make sure you reach out to Tim. Tim will put your contact information out there, and we'll make sure everyone can find you on PathSolutions. So it's very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you can email me directly at tim@pathsolutions.com or hit our website, www.pathsolutions.com. We have demos up, videos up on our website. You can reach out and end up having a technical presentation by one of our engineers, or if you mention Network Collective, maybe they'll throw me on with you guys. So definitely love to chat with you guys.
All right, last question before we let you go is reporting. Do you guys generate some sort of daily, weekly, monthly reports? Are those generated PDF? Can they be emailed out automatically? Stuff like that. What's your reporting capability?
Yep. So automatically we send out what's called the daily network weather report. And so this report shows you here are the problems, the problem points on your network, bottlenecks on your network, issues that you ought to be aware of. But on top of that, you can do all sorts of reports, MOS score reports, uptime reports, interface reports. So all sorts of different custom reports available that can be emailed out.
Very cool. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so I think that we're going to wrap it up there. I think we could probably go on for quite some time asking questions, but I definitely do want to put a wrap on this. Tim, thank you so much for coming on, and also for sponsoring the live stream here. So looking forward to hearing more about it. Anyone who's watching, if you're interested, again, it's www.PathSolutions.com. You see the Twitter hashtag for PathSolutions there. I'm sure you could hit them up there any number of ways. And if you're having trouble getting in touch with them for whatever reason, reach out to me. I'll make sure I make the connection. So thanks again, Tim, and we'll talk soon. All right.
Jordan, Tony, thank you for having me.
PathSolutions has over 2 decades of experience building network monitoring systems designed to give you total network visibility. TotalView's automation means it can be fully deployed and configured in minutes, monitoring every device, interface, and server in your entire infrastructure. And it goes deep, collecting performance, configuration, 19 different error counters, PoE, and QoS statistics on every single interface. Now, all of this information is automatically analyzed to produce plain English answers. Problems get solved faster because more information and intelligence is brought to bear. This is what total network visibility is all about, knowing more about your network than with any other solution. TotalView is easy to acquire, as everything is included in the core offering: NetFlow, diagramming, path mapping, server monitoring, network automation, IPAM, cloud service monitoring, and more. Putting your trust in a monitoring system can require a leap of faith. From inception, TotalView has a more secure architecture and build process that helps to protect their customers. Contact PathSolutions today, where you can learn more about their competitive upgrade program, Total Network Visibility, rapidly deployed. Find out more at www.pathsolutions.com.